Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Vin Finelli sitting in for Rich Sheehan. Jason, thank you for engineering the broadcast. Rich, thanks so much for keeping the seat warm. Appreciate it. Thank you for all that you do. And Gwyneth. And Dr. Norm Shealy. And Bert and Sharon and Kyle and George and all the others who are part of USA Prepares. David, Captain John. And the list is pretty long, so I'm not going to name everybody, but thank you for being part of USA Prepares. Well, I can take some calls today. It's just me and a couple calls. And if you'd like to call, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. However, if you choose to call, I'd like you to stay on topic. And what the topic is today is tips from the book. The way I do things that I'm going to share with you. And if you have follow-up questions, like if I say something and you go, I'd really like to know a little bit more about that, please call. And I will do my best to give you more information about what I mentioned. I don't want to talk about this election. There's nothing we can do about it. We have a person who has been appointed and a vice person who has been appointed. And that's the way it is. So what do? Well, you do what you can, and that is take care of your family. And I'm not talking about rioting. We're not going to do that. What you do is you just do what you can, make the best of what you have. The economy is going down the drain, which we said it would. And jobs are few and far between. Most jobs now are make work. And it's miserable dealing with companies. You buy something on the internet and you get a box, and the little thing is on the bottom, the soft breakable thing's on the bottom, the cans are on the top, the cans get smashed, the little thing gets smashed, and it's a hassle dealing with these companies. It's miserable. They don't train people how to pack. And they have not come to the realization that when you buy it on the internet and you click checkout and you say complete or pay and you bought that, that's yours. Now it's their responsibility to take care of it and treat it as if it's yours, but they don't. They don't care. They just throw it in the box, maybe put some enough tape on it, maybe not, put it in a great big box when it's a little thing. It rattles around, gets handled by UPS and the United States Postal Service and gets beat up. And then you get it and it's broken. Then you have to fight with the company to get it resolved. And most people just say, the heck with it. But I guarantee you that unless you got a substantial discount, if you were in the grocery store or the supermarket in the good old days, you would not go and look through the shelf and find that dented can of tomato soup and pay full price for it. You wouldn't do that. Or the can of corn or beans or whatever it might be. You would expect that damaged goods would have a price that reflect the damage. Well, okay, in that line of thinking, I placed a call. I wanted to buy something from an internet company. As a matter of fact, I don't go out. I just stay here at the farm. And there are reasons why I don't go out. But, so anyway, this internet company, I searched for the product. And it comes in a cardboard kind of a container. So I went to the internet and I typed in the generic name for this thing. And I thought, I'll get 4 of these. Amazon had them, $15. And Walmart had it. And you pay shipping if the order is less than $35. And there was this other company that said, a very well-known company, one that I might have thought was reputable at one time, till yesterday. And on the first page of the website, it said 25% off and 99-cent shipping. But it said claim your 25% off and 99-cent shipping. Well, that doesn't mean you're going to get it. It means you can claim it. But what do you have to do to get it? Well, that's different. See, what we've done is we've got these marketing people involved in wordsmithing, twisting the language. To claim it, what you do is you buy it. And then but you have to give them your email address. And you have to give them the email address of a friend. And if the friend buys something, then you and your friend get a 25% off coupon. So I went to, I opened another tab on the screen and I typed in coupon for this company. I found all these coupons and 30% off, 50% off, 80% off, 20% off, 15% off. So I started copying those, and those companies that have the coupons now want your email address. Used to be able to just click and copy the coupon. Not anymore. So I was able to find a coupon, and it didn't work. So I used the coupon on the website from the internet company that I was trying to buy this 4 products from, and their coupon didn't work. So I went to the chat, and miserable operation trying to chat. And it wants all this information, like your email address. And so I disconnected from the chat 4 times, maybe 5, in frustration. And I saw the 800 number, so I called the 800 number and I got connected to the Philippines. And the people in the Philippines are really nice. They really are. But they're not authorized to do everything that you'd like them to be able to do. So I said, I'd like to buy this, but on your website it says 25% off and 99-cent shipping, and I'm good for that, if that's what you're going to do. She said, well, let me look. And she said, no, that coupon expired. I said, well, it's right on your website right now. She said, well, no, that expired. Then she came back. She said, well, it doesn't apply to what you want to buy. So why does it have it on the website if it doesn't apply and it expired? So I said, well, what can we do? She said, well, I'll tell you what. Let me place the order and see what I can come up with. And I said, okay, you can do that, but I don't want to waste your time. If you can't come up with something that's decent, something that's acceptable to me in terms of a discount, I'm not going to buy it. So I let her know up front that I was frustrated. Now, I wasn't yelling and screaming and ranting and raving. I was just firm. And so she said, well, how about I give you $10 off? And I said, no. How about, and it was going to come out to, $4.99 shipping. I said, no. How about 99-cent shipping? She said, well, I'll tell you what, I can give you free shipping, but not $10 off. I said, no. So finally, she gave me 10% off, free shipping. And I said, okay, is that the best you can do? And she said, I can give you a $5 coupon for your next purchase. And I said, okay, let's do that. So I got almost everything I wanted, but I had to keep asking. And what they do is they have tiers. Now, I haven't seen the tiers, but I believe they have tiers. And they start out with their lowest offer, and then they don't want, since you've spent 8 minutes on the phone with them, they don't want you to go away without them selling you something. So they keep increasing the offer. And that's how you can do it. But it's miserable. I have some homework for you. On Netflix, if you happen to have Netflix, there's a series. It is, it's upsetting. It's called WWII, as in World War II, in HD, as in high definition. They claim that there are scenes and video and images that have never been seen before. Well, I've seen some of them. It is about World War II. It's about the sneaky attack by the Japanese on the United States. And how the Japanese occupied an island off the coast of Alaska, an Alaskan island. They took an island. They did. In 1941. And it's about the Nazi submarines and how they would sneak. They would sneak around the ocean and they would find a merchant ship and they'd sink it. A merchant ship. And if you watch this, or if you watch Combat, C-O-M-B-A-T exclamation point, you will see how horrible war is. And how one guy like Adolf Hitler can set the world on fire and fanatics can follow one guy. And then that one guy, while he's building his machine, his political machine, he accumulates friends and fanatics. And those fanatics do things for him. I believe William Jefferson Blythe Clinton had some fanatics, and they did things for him. And he might not have said, hey, I want you to take care of business. I think they just said, oh, geez, Willie, this looks like a terrible thing. We'll just take care of it. I have a feeling that that's how it went. As a matter of fact, that's what Larry Nichols told me. That's how it goes. Well, Adolf Hitler had some friends, and one of them was a guy named Ernst Röhm. And Ernst Röhm built the SA, the brown shirts. And the brown shirts had their own uniform, and they had their own daggers, and they were brown-handled daggers. They were called SA daggers. Then these other guys came around, led by a guy named Heinrich Himmler, and he liked black uniforms. They were called the SS. And they had daggers, and they had black handles. And by the way, the black-handled daggers are worth more than the brown-handled daggers. Because the black-handled dagger guys were way more ruthless than the brown-handled dagger guys. Well, Adolf Hitler had a problem with Ernst Röhm. So he had him killed. It's called the Night of the Long Knives. So, what I'm saying is, in politics, you gotta be careful who your friends are. Because you may support a guy and be really, really loyal and find out that you've been executed. And in that line of thinking, we find out that Proud Boys, the guy who was leader of the Proud Boys, was an informant for the police. Can you imagine that? So there's some people who have friends and they get together and they say, you know, there's a thing in Washington, we should go. We should go to Washington and protest. And wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice and you'll have a good time and see what it's all about? And we'll see some of those Proud Boys and maybe get our picture taken with them. And, you know, that's a really good thing because they're proud. And the image is proud of America. But the leadership, the guy who's running, it's an informant. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying people didn't know that. So you have to choose your friends wisely. We'll talk more about that. You can get some bad information from people you like. Just me today. I'm going to have some tips from the book, but I wanted to comment on some things that I've observed. And that's what we do here at USA Prepares. We look up, we look down, we look forward, we look backward, we look to history as an indicator of what might happen in the future. And there really is not much new under the sun. So this is from Reuters. Now, I don't really spend a lot of time talking about articles, but I'm trying to make a point here. And it's about, the point is, who do you follow? And do you vet them? Or do you just, do you listen to people in the media and say, well, they're in the media, they have a microphone, they've got to be right. Well, here's something from Reuters. And the title of the article is exclusive. Proud Boys leader was prolific informer for law enforcement. This is Reuters. Enrique Tarrio, the leader of Proud Boys extremist group, has a past as an informer for the federal and local law enforcement, repeatedly working undercover for investigators after he was arrested in 2012, according to a former prosecutor and transcript of the 2014 federal court proceedings obtained by Reuters. How about that? Okay, so let's connect some dots. There's a radio outlet. I'm not going to name them. But they were suggesting that people share rides and go to Washington, D.C. for a protest. Have a good old time. And you get in a car with somebody you don't know. And I mentioned this before. Get in a car with somebody you don't know. Have you put your brain in park? Get in a car with somebody you don't know? I mean, why else would you go to a website and try to find a ride? Because if you already knew somebody, you'd already talked to them. So this is obviously finding somebody you don't know to hop in the car with. Now, what would happen if you get in this car and you get, and you're the passenger? And you agree, hey, we'll split the gas, tolls, etc. And the car breaks down and has a flat tire, whatever it might be, fan belt flops off, overheats, tire blows. And you're off to the side of the road and the police come over and they say, you guys all right? Yeah, we just got a flat tire. And the police start looking around. They become interested in what's in your car. And they find that they decide to search it. They claim probable cause and they find some drugs from the guy who you're sharing a ride with. Now you both get hauled off to the clink. Has it ever happened? Has that ever happened? Huh. I got in a car many years ago, maybe close to 10 years ago, went down to the Mexican border with two broadcasters. And we took turns driving. It was nonstop. And we wanted to see the wall. We wanted to see what's it really like. Well, we had an arrangement with a farmer who lived, his back fence was Mexico. Take one step toward his house, his ranch, and it was the United States. So he's right on the line. Well, the wall was separating Mexico from him, and it was maybe 8 miles long. Tall fence, maybe 16 feet tall. And then at the end of the 8 miles, it was barbed wire. So if you looked up and you said, shoot, that thing's too tall, I'm not going to climb that, just walk 4 miles in either direction and just hop over the barbed wire. Now, it wasn't razor concertina wire like a prison. It was like cattle fencing. 4 or 5 strands of barbed wire. You hop over it or hop under it. It's real easy. Well, we saw that. Well, while we're getting gas, it was my turn to pay for gas, and I was pumping gas, and the other two guys went into the quick stop and rob, whatever you want to call it. And I went in, parked the car after I filled up the tank, went inside, and I saw one of the radio broadcasters who's not on GCN, who's not on, local guy, a local broadcaster on a local radio station. He had a headache. So he went over to the shelf where they had headache remedies, and he grabbed one, looked at it, and put it in his pocket to steal it. I looked at him, and I looked at him, and he looked at me, and he goes, oh. And then he decided he was going to pay for it. So what would happen if we got in the car, and then the store owner said, those guys stole Bayer aspirin or Advil or whatever it might have been. So the leader of the Proud Boys, let me continue reading just a little bit of this. This is important because I'm trying to share with you, you got to be really careful who you trust. Proud Boys. I mean, that sounds like who wouldn't want to be proud, right? Who wouldn't want to be proud of America? Well, the article in Reuters says, quote, in the Miami hearing, a federal prosecutor, a Federal Bureau of Investigation agent, and Tarrio's own lawyer described his undercover work and said he helped authorities prosecute more than a dozen people in various cases involving drugs, gambling, and human smuggling. Tarrio, in an interview with Reuters, Tuesday denied working with undercover or cooperating in cases against others. Quote, I don't know any of this, end quote, he said when asked about the transcript. I don't recall any of this. Law enforcement officials and the court transcript contradict his denial. Now, so here's a guy who doesn't recall cooperating with the police, doesn't remember being involved, turning over information about people who he knows. Can you trust somebody like this? Now, I'm not saying that he shouldn't have. I'm just saying that here's a guy that people are following blindly. They're also following blindly people in the media. Like, to me, going to Washington, D.C. and getting a ride share with somebody you don't know is like beyond stupid. You don't know if the person can drive. You don't know if the person has a history. You don't know if the person is a felon and wanted. You don't know if the person has a gun in the car and is a felon and is not allowed to carry it, and y'all can be arrested because of that. You don't know. You don't know. Are you going to look through that person's luggage? Are you going to lift up the floor mats and see if there's any drugs in there? Are you? You don't know if the car is stolen. You don't know if he is on the DUI list. You don't know if he's wanted. You don't know if he's a disease carrier. You don't know. And suggesting a ride share is like beyond dumb. To me, I wouldn't do it. And I said that. I wouldn't do it. Not only that, I wouldn't go to Washington. Not only that, I wouldn't go to any of these protests. Why would anyone go to a protest where you have to get a permit from the government to protest what the government is already doing? Why would you do that? Stay home. Don't get involved in any of these things. It's dangerous. Why would you do that? Take care of your family. That's your job. That's job number one. Take care of yourself and your family. I said I have an immutable point of view, an opinion about COVID-19, the coronavirus, which I have dubbed the corona panic. The ensuing fallout from the coronavirus would be the corona panic. It's here. It's been here for quite a while, the corona panic. It is in desperation, job loss, poverty, disease, shortages. People are committing suicide. And yet there's a radio outlet that says it's fake, fraud, and use their term BS. I object to that. I told you that I was at a meeting, and they didn't know I was there, at the highest level of a large hospital organization. Very, very, very large. And I heard from the heads of departments what was going on. The top people. The doctors and nurses of the hospital, of which there are a lot. Big number. And I'm not going to tell you the numbers because it will help you identify who this hospital is or what it is. I'm not going to do it. But I got it firsthand. In the early days, about a year ago. This is real. And the hospitals didn't know what to do about it. They didn't have the protective equipment. They were in full panic. So here's what's happened. Here's what I know. Now, when I say I know, I don't mean I think. I mean I know. There's a difference. I know. Firsthand. I know. All the neighbors on 3 sides of our farm have been infected. They've had a tough go of it. I don't know about the other neighbor. I haven't talked to him. It's 3 sides. The husband and the wife in each house have had it, and it's been tough. I was on the phone with one of the guys recently who's recovering, and he was out of breath just reaching for his cell phone, which was probably in his pocket. There's an automobile repair facility, a company that we deal with in another state. We do business with them and they are a specialty company, and they repair automotive products as a unit. So, for example, let's say it's like an engine remanufacturer. Every one of their employees has had COVID-19. Everyone. But it wasn't as debilitating, a day or two, and they were feeling kind of lousy, and they got over it very quickly. Their opinion is it's no big deal, and they're not going to believe anything about this COVID-19 virus being debilitating. They don't believe any of it because their experience wasn't so bad. There's a young woman known to our family in Missouri who got over the infection. She got COVID-19. She got over it. It was somewhat debilitating, but she got over it. Now she has headaches like she's never had before, and they keep coming back. So when people say it's no big deal, how many times have you, in the good old days, been at work and someone say, I have a headache, and they can't do their job because they have a headache? It's debilitating. But now we say, well, yeah, but they're still alive. They can't work when they have a headache, but they're still alive, so it's no big deal, right? That's ridiculous. It is a big deal. Another family relation of ours, not in my farm. Nobody here has it. But another family relation of ours suffered severe vomiting, dizziness, passing out, lost the smell, lost the taste. All the coworkers got it. Same symptoms. They closed the business down. The people are working from home. They're all middle-aged, healthy people. And they are really suffering with this. They're really suffering with the disease. I mentioned there's a family relation through marriage. And the great-grandfather got COVID-19. He's in the hospital. He's in really serious condition. And the great-grandmother got it too. They're both in the hospital. On oxygen, maybe even on a ventilator. I don't know as of the moment whether they're on a ventilator or not. But they've been in the hospital. It doesn't look good. So what happened? Well, they had this person come in to help them. Help them with the housework, those kinds of things. This person was infected. So this visitor, who they paid to come help them out, infected them. Now they're both in the hospital. The great-grandfather and the great-grandmother. So now there's three of them that have it. Now the children, who are grandparents themselves, of the great-grandparents, they're about my age, so the children, their children, there's three of them. And what they did was what children should do. They helped out mom and dad. They'd visit their mom and dad, and they'd help them out around the house. And they'd stay for a few days, and then they took turns. They all got it. So all three of them are infected. Two of them are hospitalized. They're having a tough go of it. Now, one of the children's children has it. That's another one. Now, this costs between $51,000 and $70-something thousand a piece. Hospitalization. All because someone was helping them out and infected the whole family. And it's spreading like wildfire. So when you hear people say on the radio, oh, it's all BS, it's nonsense, it's fake, it's fraud. I'm here to tell you, I know these people. And I know they're terrified of losing their family. And when all that's said and done, when they get the copayment, the deductible, or the hospitalization bills, they're going to be in shock. All because some person came to help them out, came to help out the great-grandparents. What I'm telling you is you have to be very careful who you believe. Very careful. And I am so glad that I am no longer associated with people who say, not me, associated by being on a network where people say this is fake, this is fraud, this is BS. It's nonsense. It's real. Okay, so I talked about the Proud Boys and associations. Be careful with whom you associate. My mother used to say, Vinny, you're known by the friends you keep. You're known by the friends you keep. Okay, here's a problem. Joe, I don't know what to call him, so I'm just going to call him Joe. According to Zero Hedge, yesterday, Joe signed 37 executive orders on the first week of his presidency. Now the question is, Joe is, he's known as a plagiarist. Look it up. Joe plagiarism. At Syracuse University. Well, he's sitting at this little tiny desk. Why is he sitting at this desk looks like a child's desk. It's that size. A little taller than a child's desk, but he's sitting at this little desk and he's signing executive orders, and it looks like this, his assistant, the gal who was selected to work with him. She's kind of looking over, leaning, watching him sign his name to these executive orders. I wonder, where's the big desk? Are they sterilizing the room? Are they disinfecting the Oval Office? I don't know. Why is that? But he signed an executive order that states that the term China virus, I can't even say it now. It's now banned. You can't say the words China and virus together. It's banned. Executive order. No kidding. So I'm looking at a website, and it has the nationwide COVID-19 metrics. And the daily tests as of January 27th, that'd be, yesterday? 1,600,000. I'm rounding. 1,600,000 daily tests. It's a huge number. The daily infection rate for COVID-19, 152,000. That's a daily cases, 152,000 a day. Currently, there are 107,000 hospitalized. And the death rate, yesterday, Wednesday, 4,000. Actually, 4,077. Now, I've heard the stories that you've heard. You know, guys riding his bicycle, bangs into the curb, falls over, dies. COVID-19. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. Because one of our family members was tested a couple times for COVID-19. Not at the farm. Out of state. Twice. This family member has all the symptoms. And the test came back negative and negative. So what I'm telling you is, I don't believe that all these numbers are inflated about COVID-19, because the experience that we have with our family member is that all the symptoms, but negative and negative. Now, I've heard the other stories where people have been tested, they got negative and positive on the same day. So, are there false positives and false negatives? Of course. What I'm telling you is, you can only go by what you know. Now, here's what I know. In the early days, about a year ago, January last year, we heard all these huge numbers. And by the way, the guy with the big hair, he said, oh no, we got this under control, we're on top of it. He mismanaged this better than anybody I could imagine working on anything. Total mismanagement of COVID-19, which used to be able to, he called it the China virus. So government used to call it the China virus, but now government says you can't say that. Can't say China virus because it's not polite. So I guess you can't say the Italian mafia either, right? Or the Russian mafia, because it's not polite. All right. So here we have people dying. 4,000 a day? It's huge. And the boss told us, it's going to be okay. They let it run wild. You have to pay attention. You have to minimize your risk because the people who I've talked to, it's been unpleasant for everybody, and it's nearly deadly for most that I'm related to. It's a big deal. So how many cases in the United States so far? Globally, it's 100 million. Actually, 101 million so far. 101 million. Now we're number one. 26 million cases in the United States. So we're number one in COVID-19 cases, and this is from the dashboard for the Center of Systems, Science, and Engineering, CSSE, at Johns Hopkins. We're also number one in deaths, 429,000. Now, the boss was telling us a year ago that, we got one person's pretty sick, but we'll probably be okay. 429,000. That's getting close to 500,000 dead. And 26 million cases in the United States. David, welcome.
How you doing?
I'm pretty frosted. At, people I used to be associated with, and praise the Lord, I am no longer associated with them because they've thrown me overboard. And I really appreciate that because they say that this is fake, fraud, and BS. Well, I think that's dangerous, saying that. Letting people go out, no mask, no glove. No, I'm not doing that. I'm not putting a diaper on my head. Nobody's ever said put a diaper on your head.
Yeah, one thing before I make a comment. You were talking about Netflix and World War II. You should look on there called The Liberator. It's like a World War II about another unit of Native Americans, and it's a mini series, and they actually tell you what happened to his life when he died and everything at the end. It's good.
The Liberator?
Yep.
Okay. Can you stick with us?
Yeah,
I do need to get to some of these tips, and if you want to hang on and ask me follow-up questions about the tips, you can certainly do that as well. David and I will be right back. Well, we got a few more seconds. Anything else you want to say in the last 10 seconds?
No, I'll let you die.
Okay. I'm so glad you called because people were asking, how's David? Well, you can hear him right now. How's David? David, you doing okay?
They don't let me talk much.
They don't? Okay. Are you doing okay?
Yeah, so far.
All right. We'll be right back. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. David is joining me. And David, I just want to make a couple quick comments. Tomorrow, Kathy and Sharon will be at the front of the classroom. Kathy and Sharon are USA Prepares domestic engineers. They are the best I know in the world of saving money, taking care of their families, and doing things at the home front. And together, they will be broadcasting. I won't be here. I'm going to be listening. And I am delighted to do this. And I believe it's a first in radio where two callers who never met each other, decided that they wanted to work together and teach a class. Sharon sent me an email weeks ago asking if she could do this. And we had an opening. And I said, okay, just prepare what you want to talk about. And I suggested that Kathy take the lead because she's done it before. She's been on with me a bunch of times, and she's taken the lead and interviewed me. So this time, Kathy's going to take the lead, Next time, Sharon can take the lead if she'd like to. But they're going to teach a class, and I believe it's a radio first, where 2 callers are taking over the show. Now, when I say callers, these are callers who rose through dedication and work, rose to become instructors. So we went from caller to instructor to running the broadcast. I'm excited to be able to do that. I'm excited to be able to offer that opportunity. I believe it's a first. David was a caller. David is an instructor, and David's with us. So I just wanted to mention that. A couple other little things about COVID. World War II lasted 1,364 days, according to the Atlantic Journal and Constitution. It's a paper out of Georgia. In it, they say that on the average, there were 220 U.S. service personnel who died per day. Now, that doesn't include the wounded. That's just the ones who have died. Unfortunately, they died. So that's about 6,600 every month. Now, World War II lasted 1,364 days, 1941 through 1945. Yesterday, the United States lost 4,077 people to the coronavirus, which was formerly called the China virus by President Donald Trump when he was president. But you can't say that anymore. So, class, don't use the term China virus anymore. Can't use that because it's derogatory toward the Chinese. That's what the executive order that Joe signed says. He didn't use the word derogatory, but it's not polite. So yesterday, 4,077 people died of the coronavirus. But on average, 220 people died, servicemen died per day during World War II. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine how mismanaged the previous president, how badly he mismanaged the coronavirus? So I just want to put those numbers in perspective. 4,077 died yesterday, and during World War II, a global war, we lost 6,600 every month. We lost 2/3 in one day of the people who were killed, U.S. servicemen who were killed in a month during World War II. David?
Yeah, this whole situation has been mismanaged from the get-go, but it's still to the problem. It's still to this day. Now, I didn't know anybody up until a few months back that was exposed, and they lost 2 family members in December. These people are at really high risk. His wife has an attendant come and help now her. She brought the virus into their house. And this is how confusing and ridiculous this is. The woman that was there, she had to quarantine for 8 days. But her family has to quarantine for 28 days. But she's able, after 8 days, to still go back to that house every day to assist these individuals. And I mean, if they get it, they're in trouble. That's how bad a health issues. I tried to get them off.
I have a comment. I can't help it. So, a year ago, we would hear, these large numbers of infectees. And we would ask, y'all know anybody? No. You know anybody? No. You know anybody? No. So you'd ask, do you know anybody who has it? No, but the numbers were growing really, really quickly. So in the early days, the reports were people were infected, lots of them, but nobody knew anybody who had it, except maybe a couple people would know somebody. Now, there's a guy in New York City who called in and he said, oh yeah, it's really bad. All right. Well, now, if you ask any family, you all have a family member who's been infected? The answer is, yeah. So we went from, we couldn't find anybody who knew somebody who was infected to the point where now it's in every family. Tell me I'm wrong.
in the beginning, we said this before, New York was going to be one of the first hit hard. It's just the size, and it's going to happen, the way they live. But here's the thing. I paid attention to the news this weekend. In one day, they said all of a sudden the California lockdowns and all the lockdowns are going to be released because all of a sudden, for some strange reason, there's a whole lot more beds and everything available, which I have an opinion about why that is, but people are looking at the numbers on the news. 15 minutes later, I see another news station saying that this new strain is found here, and the doctors are saying if you get it, you will be fighting for your life in the hospital. And it is spreading in the West Coast and in a couple states. Within 15 minutes, two totally different stories. To this day, we're still getting this confusing information from people we're supposed to be looking up to in the medical field.
Okay. So, David, let's say you were going to have a surgical procedure and you were in the prep room and, just before you were going to be wheeled into the operating room. And you saw, as you're being wheeled into the operating room, you see your surgeon and you see the nurses team and you see the assistants and the anesthesiologist and nobody's got a mask on. Would that bother you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Just wondering.
Yeah.
All right. If you don't mind, I'd like to switch gears to, things that, I promised I would talk about tips from the book. And you're certainly.
Can I ask you a question? Yeah. This could be a tip from your book.
Yeah.
It could be. You raise animals, and a lot of people that call up here raise and have dogs. Now, I mentioned I lost my shepherd. We're looking for another one. My question is, do you inject your own vaccines for your dogs, or and how do you go about that process? That's okay.
Okay. Yeah. We have a veterinarian, actually a couple of veterinarians that we really like in this area. And when our son was studying at the university, I suggested that he volunteer at the veterinarian's clinic. So he showed up and he said, "Hey, I'm here to volunteer. I'll do whatever you want. I don't want any money. I'm here to help out. Do whatever you want me to do. Muck out the areas where the animals, the large animals are treated. Whatever you want me to do. Help deliver, cows, calves, whatever you want me to do. I'll do it at no charge. And I'd love to do it for the experience." Well, they became, friends of his. And, so we go to them for the immunizations for the animals. Now, we don't do most of them, but we do the ones that are absolutely necessary. So that's it. That's all we do. And, we try to make sure that the dogs don't eat poop and things like that, get worms. But, we do go to a veterinarian for that. But I suppose we could give them our own injections if we wanted to.
That's why I was just curious, because, the last shepherd that I had, we did not give them the whole cocktail that they wanted to give them, because there's a lot. He's the only one that went to full life. All the others died of cancer. And that's something that I just, and they said, well, you could just go to the farm store and get the vaccine yourself. You already know how to give injections. You could do it. So I just was curious if that's and if you had any similar experiences with giving multiple, the whole, because they want you to, the last time, I don't know how many vaccines there was in one vial of of everything they want you to give them. Now they want you to give them the whole thing. Yeah, and I didn't know if you had any experiences with any, health problems in doing that, if you have had in the past.
Well, okay. All right, we can talk about that. And this is something that's in the book. I've had shepherds probably most of my life since maybe 10, 12 years old. And, they're wonderful animals. We have, 2 shepherds right now. They're about a year old now. And they got the minimum, of the vaccines, absolute minimum. Now, we did lose a couple shepherds because we were advised by a veterinarian to put Frontline on them for fleas and ticks. And it's this liquid and it's a little ampule and you pour a specific amount based on weight behind their shoulders. You rub it in, everything's good to go for a month. And they don't scratch because it kills the fleas and ticks. But what it ended up doing is paralyzing both of the shepherds. And one of them, the rear legs wouldn't work. The other one was incontinent about the same time. So these are both puppies that we got. Started out, they were the same age, and one became incontinent, and the other one, only the front legs worked. So the nervous system became destroyed. So the ingredients in Frontline, I would never use, nor any of the compounds like it. So what do? We flea and tick check and comb the animals the hard way. That's what we do. Or we use Cedarcide, which is, you can look it up, Cedar, C-I-D-E, and you can spray that on them. And it's not for cats, just for dogs. Keep it out of their faces, and the fleas and ticks don't like it. But you have to do it, every couple times a week maybe. But that's what we do. And we spray down their bedding, where they like to sleep, so the hitchhikers don't like to jump on. That's how we handle that. It works great. But, Mrs. Finelli has a flea comb, and she takes it out, and then dogs run over because they get attention. They love it. So that's what we do. And then we treat the fleas that are on the flea comb to a swim. And they can't swim. You can't swim. Just get in soapy water and they dive under and they never come back up. So we'll come back. David, if you have any other questions, I was going to talk about oil changes and why certain engines that absolutely have to have often oil changes, regular, early and often. So it's just me in the studio, and David has joined, and I wanted to mention a couple of things from the tips in the book about oil changes. I've talked about oil changes a lot, but this is really important. So we see a lot of vehicles here at the farm, and we help people with their broken down vehicles. And one of the things that we've been seeing is a plethora of problems with engines that have these high efficiency gasoline powered engines with variable valve timing, VVT. Okay. And what this is a way of advancing and retarding the camshaft to alter the timing of the intake and exhaust valves for maximum performance at any given RPM range. So you can get more fuel economy with this variable valve timing. And the way it works is there's a solenoid, it's an electrically controlled solenoid, that alters the oil pressure that goes to the valve timing mechanism. And we have seen these darn things get plugged up because people don't change their oil enough. So if the oil change frequency is 5,000 miles, they say, well, 5, 6, 7, 8,000, 9,000, that's close. What happens is the sludge builds up in the engine, and it causes this solenoid that regulates the flow of oil to become impaired. And the variable valve timing stops working, and the fuel economy nosedives. Also, the engine runs really rough, and it emits, more pollution. It's just a bad thing. And all you have to do is change your oil a little more frequently. That's all you have to do, and use the right oil. That's all. And when you change, and you need to change the oil yourself, because you can't trust anybody to put the right oil in your car anymore, because they don't know. The guy at the auto parts store doesn't know. The guy at the Quick Lube doesn't know. The salesperson at Walmart, when you get your oil change, which one do you want? Do you want the $19.99, the $29.99, the $39.99, the $49.99, or do you want the good stuff? Like Mobil 1. And different engine manufacturers require different additives. So, for example, if you have a Mercedes-Benz, a lot of them require 0W40. And 0W40 is available by Mobil 1, and it's called European formula. Why? Because the Europeans want more additives to keep the engines clean. And when I look in the engines, when I open up a Mercedes-Benz valve cover, they look great because we use the right oil, and you can too. Okay, so read the owner's manual, find out what the engine manufacturer, the car manufacturer wants you to use it and change it often, more often, especially if you have a variable valve timing engine. And who has them? General Motors, the little 4-cylinder engines, the Asians, Honda, manufacturers like that, they have them. So VVT, look for it. And if you have it, change your oil often and use the right oil. And here's what I do. So not everybody does this, but when I get an oil filter, they come in a box. And I'm looking at one right now, STP. STP is the house brand for AutoZone. I've cut them apart now. They're okay. The STP brand oil filters are okay. And we buy them probably, I don't know, 50 to 100 at a time. So we get a really good price on them. And they come in boxes, and they are sealed at the end cap. There's a plastic seal to keep dust from getting in them, to keep moisture from rusting them. Now, of course, they're made in China. But what I do when I change the oil, of course, I told you I change it when the oil's hot. I've got everything ready, come back from a trip, at least a half hour. I put the, in our case, I put the car up on the lift, and I put the oil drain pan under it, pull out the oil filter, pull out the drain plug, and let it drain overnight. Well, you can buy a drain pan, one of those black drain pans, and drain your oil yourself. And the car has to be warm, in my opinion, the engine. But of course, there's a risk of burning yourself. So keep that in mind. Try not to burn yourself with the hot oil. And let it drain on a flat surface, level surface, for hours. And you won't believe how much more oil comes out than if you just let it drain for, the 15 seconds like the quick lube places. Let it drain for. So you get more oil out, more sludge out, and your engine will run better and will last longer. Well, here's what I do with the box. Now, the oil filter box, I cut the side, where it says the brand and the model of the oil filter. I cut off the side of the box. And I write on the back of it the date, the mileage, the oil I used, etc. So I keep these little, let's say 3x5 size boxes or larger, and I put them in a Ziploc bag, and they are dated, and that's what I did. If I change the transmission filter, I cut the side of the box off. So tips from the book, and David's with us. Dave, do you have any comments about what I said about cutting the side of the box off? Because that says I can write down where I bought it, the date that I changed the oil, the kind of oil I used, the quantity of oil I used, and anything else I might have done, like replaced or tightened a fan belt if it had that kind of adjustment, or looked at the brakes or checked the coolant. I write down all the things that I did at that time on the side of the box. Or if I put a transmission filter in it, I'll cut that off, and it'll say, where I bought it and the date. And so if there's any warranty issues, well, here's the side of the box, and look up, the date I bought it in case I lost the receipt or something. Any comments?
Well, that's a great idea I didn't never think about that when I used to drive, but, cause it was just me driving the car. If you have multiple family members driving a car, they may not know. And I have to say, agree with you about the oil, making sure you should do it yourself. When I met people driving, that was amazing how many people do not change their oil. And I would ask them, what do you put? Do you know what they put? They have no idea. And they don't even seem to care. And
okay, very good. How about this? That leads to two other things. One is, if you buy a car, I would want to buy it from the person who owns it rather than buy it from a dealer. I would never buy another car from a dealer. I haven't done that for, decades. But because what they do is they buy them from individuals and they slap them together and they go, okay, here, this is, it's from a dealer, so obviously it's good. Well, it's not. It's not necessarily the case. They buy them at auction. They try to patch them up and get rid of them. Well, having a car fixed today is very, very expensive. I don't care what the problem is. All right. So what I do when I change the oil is I go to if I don't already know, I go to the oil filter cross-reference on the internet. I'll just say whatever the oil filter is that the car calls for. I'll type in that, like FRAM PH8A, FRAM, F-R-A-M, space PH8A, and I'll type in comma cross-reference. And I'll see what other alternatives there are. And then I'll look at the sizes, and I'll select the largest one, physically the largest one. And of course, I want to make sure that if I look at the oil filter on the car, and if it's like, 4 inches long, do I have room for a 5-inch long one? If I do, I'm getting, 25% more, area, 25% more oil, 25% more oil in the filter for cooling. Everything's better, more filter media. It's crazy not to do it. And a lot of times the larger ones cost the same or less than the small ones. I mean, you don't need to have the fun size oil filter. And I believe the reason that oil filters are so small today with new cars is because the accountants got together and said, hey, don't forget about me. I can save you money. So instead of putting a big oil filter on a car that uses a quart of oil, we can put a tiny one in that uses a quarter of a quart of oil. And we'll save 3/4 of a quart of oil on every new car. And I think that's what they're doing. So I want the big oil filter. And that's what I do. I look at the cross-reference. And what you need to do is you look at the specifications. You go to the oil filter cross-reference. And you look at, and there's like probably 50 different brands. And you can find them on eBay. You can find them at your local store. I suggest you buy them on eBay. And if you're going to keep the car or truck for a while, you get like 10 of them. 10 of them at 4,000 miles per oil change. That's 40,000 miles. That's not that many oil filters. Keep them cool and dry and they'll last, a long time. So that's what I do when I buy oil filters. But you need to make sure that if it has a check valve in it, that the cross-referenced one has a check valve in it also. So what's a check valve? So the oil filter, let's say you screw it in with the base up. So you're holding it in your hand, you're threading it onto the oil filter housing, and the threads are up, and the bottom of the oil filter can is in your hand. Well, the oil is going to flow into the oil filter, and it's not going to flow out. But some oil filters are sideways. And that means that the dirty oil can flow back into the engine if it doesn't have a check valve. So you want to make sure that if your filter from the factory comes from the car manufacturer, has a check valve in it, you want to make sure that the new larger one that you put on, you have room for it, number one. And two, it also has a check valve. And you also look at the gasket diameter and so forth, and make sure that the specs will move over to, the replacement larger oil filter. And that's what I do. So we have an old 1994 Jeep, and it's a 4-cylinder, and it had a small oil filter. Well, I put a Fram PH8A on it, and they cost me a couple dollars a piece. The size that it calls for is smaller, holds less oil, filters less, and costs more. That's crazy to do that. So that was one of my comments about the oil filter cross-reference and larger oil filters. Any questions or comments, David, on that?
Yeah, it's a great idea to buy it in bulk and for down the road because of the legislation I just heard about in an interview Sunday. They're planning on stopping the sale of combustion engine vehicles by 2030. Now, that may be a ways away in a way, but in a way it's not.
That's 9 years away, and the answer is you're right. I think Volvo has stopped the production of gasoline engines, and Ford has discontinued a whole bunch of their models. Looks like the sedan is toast. And so they're going toward electric vehicles. Now, if you don't think, I'm not talking about David, but class, if you don't think there's a lot of control with an electric vehicle, my gosh, all they have to do is, since you have smart meters now, they can say, I think those guys are using more electricity than they should be. So we're going to shut them off. Or we don't see a payment, and the system automatically shuts you off. So your electricity can be shut off remotely. So it's not like some guy comes to your house and you can fend him off with a shotgun and say, no, you're not going to do that because grandpa's on oxygen and he's got one of these oxygen generators. And if you shut the electricity off, you're going to kill him. That doesn't happen anymore. What happens is somebody sits at a computer with a mouse and they go, click off, and your electricity's off.
Yeah. And then there's the plans to charge per mile on those vehicles for operating them on the roadway.
Okay, and that's, and I understand that. Because here's something else that's happened, and we get off into these tangents, but I think they're valuable. So, the suburbs, there's a book, Howard Kunstler wrote a book called The Long Emergency. And it's about why the suburbs developed. So people used to live in the city, and they lived in the city because the factories were in the city. Scissors used to be made in Brooklyn. Shirts used to be made in New York City. We used to have foundries in the cities. Well, not anymore. We moved them off to China, if you can use that word anymore, China. So people who lived in the city found out that instead of living in an apartment, they could buy more land and have a house on it and drive back and forth to work because gas was cheap. Fuel was cheap. Well, so that built the suburbs. So suburbs were built, houses were spread out, and it costs more for the infrastructure to be maintained for the suburbs because there was more space. The roads were, longer roads between houses, more space between, for the city water system and so forth. The sewer system, they all cost more because of longer runs between houses. Well, but when they built those houses, they got assistance from the federal government. And building a new road isn't all that expensive compared to maintaining roads. So now what's happened is the infrastructure is collapsing in the United States because if the cities don't grow, they can't use the new money to replace the old decaying infrastructure. That's why we have problems in cities. That's why the bridges aren't fixed. That's why the roads have potholes and the cities can't afford it. So the only thing they can do is raise taxes. Now, if people switch to electric cars and they're not paying the fuel tax, the federal and state and local fuel tax per gallon, like for diesel and for gasoline, because they have electric cars, they're going to get that money. The cities and the feds are going to get their money anyway. They're just going to charge you per mile. And they're going to do it through your electric bill. That's how it's going to happen. It's as simple as that. Because the long emergency has created a real serious problem. And the car makers have somehow become so confused that they think that electricity is the answer. I got to tell you that we have a bulldozer here, and I would never even consider having an electric bulldozer because it couldn't produce the energy necessary to move dirt. I couldn't have an electric backhoe, and I certainly couldn't have an electric tractor either because they don't have the energy per unit of density in electricity that you have with diesel fuel. It's as simple as that. So this is going to be a mess. And if you think that here's another problem. There is now a shortage of semiconductors. They call them chips. Well, they're really integrated circuits. These integrated circuits, these computer circuitry devices, are in short supply. And all the manufacturers seem to be using the same integrated circuits for their computer controls on the new cars. But they're in short supply. So the production lines are being shut down because of these integrated circuit chips. Car came in here. By the way, it's really difficult to get us to look at a car because it goes through quarantine. The owner of the car will make an appointment and we'll say, okay, put it over there. And we don't even get close to them. They leave it, and we park it in the sun and we leave it there for a few days before we even consider working on it. Then we disinfect it with ultraviolet light and so forth. It's a real process. Well, a car came in here and a Mercedes. And what happened is this guy was driving along and all of a sudden the front brakes would slam on without his foot on the brake, lock up. Without him saying, hey, we're going to slow down by stepping on the brake. Well, he got the car started again, drove a little bit more, same thing happened. Pulls it over, gets it towed in, the repair shop, cuts the sensors on the front wheels and replaces the computer. Now the car's drivable. Replaces the computer. So back in the 60s, there was no such thing. If you didn't step on the brake, that car was not going to stop. Period. Now it knows when it wants to stop all by itself. This is crazy. Beyond crazy. The car manufacturers think that people are so stupid they don't even have to stop the car without a computer assisting, or computer assist.
Here's something else that happens with all these electronic cars in these computer-activated vehicles. You get some moron in the office that decides to do a firmware update on it, and you toast the vehicle because he does it wrong.
Absolutely true. Not only that, partial firmware updates. So, there are a series, when they do a firmware update for one of the car's computers or truck's computers, there's a series that, step 1, step 2, step 3, you do all of them. Some people say, well, just do the last step because that's where the problem is. We'll just work on the last one. Well, it really messes the cars up. And then they don't operate properly. And you have to go back to the dealer. And the dealer says, no, we didn't do it. So you pay to have them do it again. If it can be done.
And so most of the time it can't be. They have to. So here's
an interesting thing. Yeah. Here's an interesting thing. So a guy has a problem with his heat. Heat's not working on his car. So he goes to the internet and tries to figure out what to do. And it says, well, if you have this problem, you don't get heat in the car, it's probably the circulator pump. So what Mercedes does is they have this circulator pump. It's like $200 at AutoZone. And when you start your engine, you will have heat inside the cabin in a minute in a Mercedes. Because Mercedes doesn't think you should have to wait for heat, like 3 minutes or 4 minutes like everybody else. So they have this circulator pump. It's a couple $100, and the guy decided that he was going to put it in himself. So he did. Put it in, and heat worked for a real short time. It stopped. It didn't work. Couldn't figure it out. Couldn't figure out what the problem is. I'll tell you what happened when we come back. You'll be absolutely stunned at what the fix was. And this is valuable information that you're probably not going to learn anywhere else. So our son was working on this car with his truck, and the heat didn't work. And the owner replaced the circulation pump. And he checked all the codes, and there are a lot of codes on this particular vehicle. And he diagnosed all these problems and reset the codes. And he looked at the solenoids for the heat control. He looked at the door flappers inside the heater box, make sure that the air direction was working properly. And he felt warm coolant or antifreeze going into the heater core, but not coming out. And so he told me about it, and I said, oh, well, flush the heater core. He said, well, that's what I was going to do next. So he took the hoses off the heater core, and he flushed the heater, and he found what the problem was. There was a moth inside the heater core. Now, who would have ever thought that, oh, yeah, that's a moth. That happens all the time. That's the first time I've ever seen that, where a moth has shut down the heating system of a car. So there were no parts involved. I mean, there was just labor. And it took 3 hours for our son to diagnose and flush and, drain some of the coolant out and filter it and put it back in, because we don't like spending customers' money. So the guy got a really small bill for it, and he's delighted because now he's back in business, and he has heat. But he probably did not need to replace that heater pump for a couple $100. And, live and learn. So just because you read about it on the internet and says, here's what the problem is, is not necessarily the case. Any comments, David?
Well, I could see all of them, anything like that being, you wouldn't think something like that would happen, but hey, anything can possibly happen. But, I mean, now have you ever had this issue? Watched a video yesterday, actually last night, where they hooked the car up, had some engine problems, and they hooked it up to the computer. The computer said all 6 sparks were misfiring. The problem was it was a 4-cylinder. So figure that one out. Okay,
well, all right. There are all kinds of scanners, and what we found is some of these Asian scanners aren't so good. Actually, they're probably all come from Asia at some level. But so we have 3 different levels. And the inexpensive one that we have is probably $35. It's great because I can do a real quick check. It just can read. And then the more expensive one can read more. And then we have a real expensive one that takes forever. I mean, it takes a long time to read all these codes from the computer because it's so sophisticated. It takes longer to get that information downloaded from the computer. So, sometimes it's nice to use the cheap one because it gives you a quick, instant answer, but not complete answer. So anyway, what can happen is the programming of the scanner can be wrong. The person, and sometimes our expensive scanner, what happens is it asks you, it says, okay, is this a 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder, 8-cylinder? It wants to confirm that. So you can put in the wrong answer and get a bad result. Now we have seen these spark, coils, and they're called, coil on plug, COP. And what used to be that you'd have an ignition coil, ignition points, condenser, rotor, distributor cap, and you'd have one coil, and as the rotor spun around the distributor cap, it would send the spark to different ignition wires going to each spark plug. Well, now we have the spark plug coils on top of the spark plug, and we have seen a failure on one, but like, for example, there's an inexpensive Ford that has a 4-cylinder engine, and there are 4 spark plug coils on top of each spark plug, but you replace all of them at the same time. So instead of replacing one inexpensive part, you're looking at a couple $100 to replace all of them because they're all stuck together. I mean, it's ridiculous. These designs are not designed for the automobile owner, and they're not designed for the automobile repair mechanic. They're designed to make it easy to assemble, and the heck with everybody else downstream. So it's a real problem. But we saw, it was really interesting. We worked on a car. It was a Ford, and it was misfiring. Same kind of symptoms, same kind of error code. And what happened was the guy who changed the spark plugs before didn't put the ignition coil on plug assembly on properly. So there was a gap between the contact for the spark from the coil and the spark plug top. And it blew a hole in the side of the insulation. And it caused the whole assembly to fail. And mileage went way down, the engine ran rough, and it required roughly a $200 part. List price, or probably even more than that. But that's what happens. People just flat out don't know what they're doing, and they don't take the time and care to make sure that they do it right. Now, for example, when we replace spark plugs, we use copper coat on the threads of the spark plugs. That way they go in easier, they don't destroy the aluminum head of the engine, and they come out easier next time without destroying the head. But it takes longer. Who does it? Nobody but us. It costs, I don't know, $10, $15 for 4 ounces of this copper coat. But that's what we do. David, any comments?
But don't it make you feel that much better and you know you did it the right way?
Absolutely. May the job be big or small, do it right or not at all. Class, if you like this kind of broadcasting where we actually talk about things that hardly anybody else talks about, let me know. Send me an email, instructor@usaprepares.com. Tell me good, bad, you like it, don't like it. I'd love to know what you'd like to hear about. David, thank you for calling in and sharing your wealth of wisdom.